So this is what a good pi bond overlap looks like right here. So a pi bond, it's not a single bond. To have pi bonds involved, it would have to be double bonds or triple bonds. And the problem is that the sigma bond that starts every bond is already in the middle between two atoms, and so they can't go between. So a pi bond, what I'm saying is that when they get near each other, this space right here is already taken up with something. You can't rearrange them and make them long ways. So the only way that they're going to overlap well is something like that. You don't want it like that. You don't want it like crookedy, like that. This is the look of the best overlap. So as we overlap, you can kind of see it forms kind of like this upper and lower section. So this forms one pi bond. I know it's like top and bottom, so you want to say two, but that's just one pi bond. It doesn't form lots of pi bonds. Kind of like up here, this was just one sigma bond. It came from one S on one side and one S on the other side, making one sigma bond between them. Same over here. It was a P on one side and a P on the other, and the way it overlapped, it just formed the one pi bond.